Hello and welcome to episode 21 as I build through the Battle Games Middle-earth magazines. This month we are staying in Moria. I believe it's the last month of this 3-month run, and we are going to be continuing our journey. Now, after we leave Balrog's tomb, as you well remember, we will encounter the Balrog and escape over the bridge. And that is what the subject of this month's video is. So we'll be looking at those amazing stairs, such a crazy cinematic sequence, looking at the bridge and also the plain or the flat area where they're getting shot at by the goblins. Now this month I do have something extra to add. I know there's been a little bit light, my extra builds. I do have something extra to add which I'm very excited about doing, and I look forward to showing you that. But first of all, let's have a look at the magazine, see what it says and get started on the main build. So then, the modelling workshop, Khazad-dum. In this modelling workshop we will show you how to make the great hall and bridge of Khazad-dum, where Gandalf the Grey stood his ground against the mighty Balrog. In this pack we conclude our series of modelling workshops set in the depths of Moria. Here we recreate the bridge of Khazad-dum for use in this pack's battle game. The floor, bridge and stairway were made from a large sheet of polystyrene using techniques similar to those needed to model mine facings in Pack 20's modelling workshop. The pillars from Balrog's tomb are reused here, along with one of the mine facings' corner pieces. All this, together with some areas of rubble, will recreate the scene where Gandalf confronts the Balrog. Now, the magazine apparently came with dwarven ruins. Now, unfortunately, my one didn't because I bought it second hand. So that's what this little section is here. But what it says you need to do is a 5cm or 2-inch thick polystyrene sheet, 60 centimetres by around 20 centimetres. Now, we struggle to find them that big here, but I do have some that's about that size, so that's cool. A felt tip pen, a hot wire cutter, foam card, gravel and rocks, textured paint, PVA glue, a craft knife, a steel ruler and some cocktail sticks. So that's what you need. Let's have a look at what step 1 is. So step 1, the base. In order to give the chasm a sense of depth, we will raise the playing area by making the base out of a sheet of polystyrene. We used a 5cm 2-inch thick sheet. It was 60 centimetres long, 120 centimetres long, so 24 wide and 48 long. Using a corner section of the mine from Pack 20's modelling workshop as a guide, draw a line across the width of the sheet that is 80 centimetres or 32 inch in from one of the short edges. Cut along this line with your wire cutter and then give it a slope matching that of the mine facings. So I'm not entirely sure what that means, so I'm going to have a bit of a dig. I've read this a few times and it doesn't make very much sense. So I'll have to have a look and see what they're talking about here. But I will get that done. Probably not the first part because the base isn't really all that important to me. I'm doing scattered terrain. The one that I'm most excited about on this is step 2, which is what we're going to crack on with now, which is here. So, planning the stairway. The stairway is remarkably easy to make as it is all cut from a single sheet of polystyrene that is the same size as the base. To make it easier to cut out, draw a plan onto the polystyrene. You will need 2 sections of stairway in order to recreate the turn. The lower section's length should be about 35 centimetres. The overall length of the upper section should be the same as the width of your base. The stairway is drawn in a series of ascending levels. Each level is about 5 centimetres thick with steps leading up to it. When drawing the steps, all you need for now is to create a triangle shape as shown below. And they've got a diagram down here which you can't see because of where I'm focused. 1 second. There we are. So we have this shape here, triangle shape. That's what they're talking about there. So the lower section is 3 levels tall. The upper section has 2 more levels on top of that. Draw a large arch in the centre of the upper section. It reaches almost to the top of the 4th level. This is where the gap will be. The gap itself can be no more than 4 centimetres, 1.5 inch wide. Otherwise, the hobbits will be unable to jump it during the battle game. So I think what they're talking about here is that this is going to actually be stuck onto the base, which makes some sense, but I'm not going to do it like that because I want it to be separate because it's going to be a little bit easier to store. So I'm going to get stuck into this step 2, planning the stairway, and I'll bring you along. So I'll gather my materials and then we will do some drawing. Alright, let's do some drawing on this sheet. As you can see, I've got my polystyrene, and I think that's going to be absolutely fine. So what it says is that the top section should be the width of your base. Now if I do end up doing a base, it will be on one of these, and this is 50 centimeters wide. Like I say, we don't get quite the same dimensions as they suggest in here. So I'm going to mark 50 centimeters there, which is going to be the length of the bottom section, top section even. And the bottom section should be 35 centimeters. So if we come along here, we'll be able to mark 35 centimeters off, and you can see that we've got plenty. So that's fine. So what it's suggesting is that the stairway is drawn as a series of ascending levels. Each level is about 5 centimeters thick. So we're going to be going up 5 centimeters. And I'm presuming that we're going to go along about 5. So if we look at the maths, if we work some maths out on this diagram, so if that's 35 centimeters, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, yeah, so 5 centimeters there, 10, 20, 30, yeah. So my maths is right. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to go for an upright at 5 centimeters. And then it will be, so the 5 sets, so we'll go up there, and then it'll go along 10, and then it'll go up again 15, and then it'll go along 10, and then it'll go up again. So that gives me an idea of how I'm going to plan this. So what I'll do is I will grab a right angle, and this isn't going to be measured just yet. We're just going to draw lines at these points. There we are. So the first one wants to go up 5 centimeters. From there, up 5 centimeters. So we drew way too much, but that's fine. Just put a mark there. So our triangle is that. Then we're going to go along. Like that. No, we're going to go along to there. I missed one. I was looking at that going, that doesn't seem right. Yeah, so we're going to go along to there. And then we're going to go up 5 centimeters here. Okay, so that makes that 10 centimeters. So then we're going to go, and I missed my mark there as well. I missed a couple. So we'll measure 10 centimeters up that line and draw along. And then we'll measure 15 centimeters up this one. And we've got our lower section. There we are. So that's our lower section. That looks about right. So what we now want to do is work out roughly what our positions are going to be for the next step, which is going to be a longer flat, another 5 centimeter rise, another longer flat section, another 5 centimeter rise, and another longer section. So if we do some basic mental arithmetic, the gap here, so there's an arch, draw a large arch in the centre of the upper section. It reaches almost to the top of the 4th level. This is where the gap will be. The gap itself can be no more than 4 centimetres wide, but we can fake that, can't we? Because, yeah, anyway. So the 25 centimetres is the centre. So I'm going to draw a line at 25 centimetres because we know, using our basic maths of how this is roughly going to be, that we're going to come along here for a certain amount of distance. Let me make a mark at 15 centimetres here. Somewhere along this line we want to go up, and we want it to be halfway between the line, which divided 25 by 2 is 12.5, so that's the point at which we're going to go up. So what we'll do is we'll measure 5 centimetres along, go to 90 degree, which is now rapidly becoming too small, so I might need to get a bigger one. Measure 5 centimetres up from there and draw that in, and that's our next level up. You can see it's relatively simple geometry this, but you do need to keep your wits about you, don't want to muck up. So that now is 20 centimetres, So what we'll do is we'll continue this line. No, we'll actually know what we'll do. We'll work out what that distance is. That was 12.5. So we'll go 12.5 to over here. And 12.5 to over here. Make sure I did that right. I did, just about. Another 90-degree line. And that should be 20 centimetres up. Apologies if this is dull. And actually looking at it, that's where the gap is, isn't it, in the centre there. So let me draw that line across. Let me get this absolutely right, because I'm confusing myself. Having said it's easy, that's always the curse of the hobbyist. Yeah, this is easy, and then suddenly it all gets confusing. So we'll just draw a line across there, because that's the 4th level, and dead centre of that is where we want to have the break. So that means that if we're going to have the break there, I'll start up at 120 in, finish it at 170 and that 70 in, and that'll be fine. So if I mark another 5 up here, and I can use my 90 degrees on this side now. Donk. 7, 7. And we've done it. Wasn't that fun? How long's that clip? 8 minutes of me faffing about. Video gold. So what we have is we have an archway. So let's mark the archway. Let's make it 10 centimetres wide, which will match to that line there. That's good. We can always make it bigger if we want to. Actually, let's make it bigger, because that's rubbish. Let's make it 14 centimetres wide, from there to there. Much better. There we are. So now I need to cut that out. That is a bit smaller than I was expecting. I'm a little bit disappointed. Maybe I'll make another one a bit bigger. But I'm going to continue with this size for now. I will cut that out and probably get my Proxon on it. So let me just tidy up, get ready, and I'll bring you along for the next step. If I'm going to use the Proxon, I'm going to need to trim this down. So what I've got is my super long, awesome safety ruler, as you can see, and a very sharp Stanley knife. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut down that line, and then I'll be able to position this and maneuver this around on my Proxon. So let's get this done. And there we are, and very limited bubbles. Now I'm going to tidy up before that gets everywhere, get the Proxon out, and then I'll bring you back. So here we are. I'm going to now turn the Proxon on, and I'm going to cut along that shape. So let's get it done. I skipped ahead a step there. I didn't read you the instructions, but I've done it anyway. So once you have drawn a plan that you're happy with, you can begin to cut it out with a hot wire cutter. Because the cutter can't cut very deep, you may need to score and snap your sheets so the cutter can gain access, which is what I did. I cut down the angle. Try to keep your wire cutter straight when cutting so that the edges are as even as can be, which is difficult even with a Proxon when you don't have a guide, and you can't really use a guide for those sorts of cuts. So what you do is you cut the zigzag pattern along the outside edge of your triangles to create the steps, as you can see. I did that, and cut the arch and the gap out too. Now I've not cut the gap out yet because I'll do that next. But give the gap rough edges so it looks as if the masonry is broken away. If you want to, you can cut some other arches out on either side of the main one, or even on the lower side of the stairs. So I've done that. I've cut out a couple more arches and that. So the final thing that I've not done, which is why I've come to you now to read to you, is cut a support support for the upper section. Finally, a support for the upper section needs to be cut out. This will be a wedge in the shape of a right-angled triangle. The easiest way to make this is to measure up to 20 centimeters from one corner of your polystyrene sheet and 12 centimeters on the other side. Draw a line between these 2 points and then cut along it with your wire cutter, creating a polystyrene wedge. So I'll do that, but I'll continue to step 4 and then I'll do all of the rest of it just with some music on you can watch. So this is assembling the stairway. Using PVA to glue the wedge onto the side of your second section as shown. To help hold the wedge in place while the glue is drying, you can use cocktail sticks to pin the 2 pieces together. Glue the lower section of the stairway onto the remaining half of the upper section as shown, creating a turn in the stairs. So we're going to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create myself a wedge, which will go here, and I'm going to glue the downstairs, the stairs down at that end there, and I'm also going to bring the hot wire cutter or maybe just use a knife and do the break there. So I'll get all that done. I'll shift the camera a little bit and you can watch how I go about doing that. Right, with that done, we're going to move on to step 5, which is building the bridge. This is all on the same evening, and I've got this feeling that this is going to be a very, very quick build, which is good because the rest of what I want to do might take me some time. Anyway, onwards. So building the bridge. The bridge of Khazad-dum will be a curve cut from a polystyrene sheet. To draw the bridge onto the sheet, first mark the edge of the sheet with a felt tip pen. This will be the centre point. Mark 2 more points, one 10 centimeters, 4 inches, and the other 15 centimeters, 6 inches away from the centre point. Repeat this on both sides of the centre point, creating a line of 5 marks. So if you're good at mental arithmetic, you know that it's going to be one dot at 15 centimeters here, one at 30 for the end. So it's going to be a 30 centimeter wide curved bridge. So we'll do that. So we'll put a dot here, put a dot at the centre point, and put a dot at the 300 point, and then it says 10 centimeters away from the centre, so 5, and 10 centimeters away, so at 5. So what it now says is draw a gentle curve joining the 2 innermost marks together. So that doesn't mean the centre one, but it means this one to that one. So a gentle curve. And it then says next join another one joining the 2 outermost. There should be a consistent gap separating the 2 curves of about 2 centimeters. So we will do our best to do that. So there we are, we have drawn out our shape for the bridge at Khazad-dum. So now what I'm going to do is get the hot wire cutter out and cut them out. So I will do that and then I'll bring you back for the next stage. So I've cut that out, as you can see, that looks really nice, I'm quite pleased with that. So what it says is that you can put cardboard base at each end just to give it a bit more stability and then decorate the base with rocks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this card, which is nice and solid. It's not too thick, but it's not too thin either, and I will draw around from the base like this, and then I will also take the other end and do the same thing, and I'll then cut that out and glue it on and put some stones on it. So first of all we'll get our base size, kind of like that, doesn't need to be too accurate. Then what we'll do is I am just going to grab some scissors for this and we'll cut those out. So let's just get that done. Now the reason I'm sometimes kind of cutting away in a more dramatic sense like that is because if I start to bend it then I'll bend my base and I don't want to do that. Okay, so there we have 2 bases. They can easily be glued on there now, so I'll just do that now. Probably use some Gorilla Glue, get some Gator Glue, sorry, again, because it will stick it nice and solidly, and then I'll weight it down, and then in about half an hour or so that'll be dry, and we'll be able to come along and do the rest of this basing. So we've got a little bit of the Gator Glue on the bottom. We'll just position that there, hard up against it. Position the other one there, hard up against it, and then just weight it down on the workbench or use clamps or whatever, and that will be fine. So when that's all set, I'll bring you back for scenicking and painting, which is the next thing. We're going to be painting everything. I might even get this all done in a night. Just over the page, which I'm going to jump to again, is something called alternative approaches. Now, because I don't have the Dwarven ruins, I'm not going to be able to do that, which is this next side here. But down here it says about ruin bases. Learn to speak, Andrew. Beside using your Dwarven ruins to add character to your Moria terrain, you could also make other interesting features to really enhance your Moria gaming areas. Try creating some simple areas of rubble by making small foam card bases and adding plenty of stones, gravel and sand. Another idea is to recycle techniques used in previous packs of Battle Games of Middle-earth. Try adding some more ruined pillars, like the one from Balin's tomb, but attached into small bases. These look great when mixed in with the intact pillars, especially on a model like Khazad-dum. Above all, experiment with all the techniques you have learned while making your Moria terrain. The only limit is your imagination. Now, I'm not going to do too much experimenting in this because I've got my other project that I'm going to be showing you. But what I am going to do is make a couple of ruins bases. So I've got these offcuts that came from another project that just had them lying around, and you can see that's 1 centimetre thick and that's a bit thicker. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine them to, I'm going to make rocks out of this and glue it onto there and put lots of scatter terrain, and we'll end up with a nice rubble base. So I don't actually even need my pencil for that. What we'll do is we'll just come along with the knife and we will bevel the edge. So I'll put some music on. This is a nasty sound, and all I'll do is I'll just bevel around. So there we are, we have a base. And now what we'll do is we will put some stones and rocks and what have you, just glue some all that stuff all over it, and then when that's dry, then we can paint it with the rest of the terrain that we've made just now. So I'll cut this in half and literally just carve out the shape of a rock. There we are, so we have a rock, and we can use a cocktail stick in the same way as we did for the main build. But in this case, we're going to want to make sure that it's not going to stick out all the way. So what we'll do is we will push it in. And then we can clip that off using some snips once it's dry. So I will use gator glue. I do like this stuff. Put it down where I want it to go, and that's going to be a really, really good line of sight blocker, and it'll also look great. So just a couple of those in there, and then if we grab some snips, we can come along and snip them off. There we are. And when we do a little bit more of the filler and what have you over that, when we paint it with our terrain paint, then that will be disappeared. So I'm going to do the same rough technique but make lower stones, so just like make it into a rough shape rather than the square shape that we had. There we are, that's good. And that one can go there, but I'm not going to pin that one because it's not tall, so that can just be weighted down. There we are. So we'll leave that to dry, and then we'll come along, and at the same time as we're doing the bridge, we'll be able to add the stones to this. These have now set, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to scatter some rocks and what have you around. So the simple way I'm going to do that is a blob of PVA, like so, and then a brush to spread it around a bit, because you don't actually want it to be too thick for this. So we'll just spread it around a bit. We can put some on the other side. That'll probably be enough for this entire piece, to be honest, at this stage, because I will probably do this in multiple stages, but it'll be basically the same thing, layering it up. And as you can probably tell, I didn't actually get this done in one day, but that's fine. Didn't need to be done in one day. I decided to leave it to go off overnight. So we'll put some stones and what have you, like this. And this is the unsifted stuff from my backyard, which is the larger stones that I've got. And when we're happy with the larger stones, then we'll go down to slightly smaller ones and then down to slightly smaller ones. So the slightly smaller ones I've got are here, and this is sifted gravel at the largest size. So I'll drop them on. And we'll keep doing this for the rest of this base around the bottom of the bridge, and also for the scatter terrain. And then when that's dry, we can come along and then we can start to paint. So I'm happy enough with that. So now we'll do the same one here. There we are. As you can see, I've put quite a lot more on these. I've even put a little bit of extra scatter on the actual bridge, which I think will be quite nice. So what I now need to do is just leave that to dry, and then we can come along and paint everything, and then we're pretty much done, which is cool. So maybe I'll even start on the other project, but I'm not sure. I now have a Rosie waking up. It's very early on the Saturday morning. Yeah, I'm gonna go and do daddy daycare, which is an absolute pleasure, of course. These are all dried overnight, and now I've got my grout mix, which will be a link in the description below to a video showing you how to make it if you do not know. And what I'm going to do is paint it all over everything. So I'll pop some music on and we'll get this done. This is all dried really nicely. What I now need to do is come along with my black terrain paint, just because the grout mix, which is really good obviously, is very thick, and so it's not always the best thing to use when you're painting over sand or trying to get into crevices. So what I'm going to do is just come across, and anywhere where I can see blue foam poking through on these, I'm going to cover it up with black paint and leave it to dry, and then we'll be to the next and final stage, which is dry brushing, and these will be ready. So I'll get this done and I'll bring you along for the next step in this video, which will probably be me getting on to the next project, the bigger project. So yeah, very exciting. I'm looking forward to doing that, and I'm looking forward to showing you what it is. But first of all, let's just make sure that these are completely covered with paint and there's no blue foam showing through. I will also paint the underneath of this bridge, because obviously I didn't do that yesterday because I didn't need to. Black paint will be fine on that. So I'll get that done and I'll be back to you again soon. Now for the moment I've been waiting for. This is the advanced part of the build for this month, which I haven't done an advanced build for a couple of months really, so I've been looking forward to getting back to this. Up there, up on the top shelf, you can see a shape, and you might be able to recognise that shape. So let me go and get it. Got it. Now I'm not very good with heights, so that was a little bit risky for me. So let me show you what I've got. I'll point the camera down and we'll have a look. So here you are, super dusty, as you can see. It has been up there for a very long time. And this is a diorama of the Balrog falling, as you can see, which I began quite a long time ago. Quite a long time ago indeed. Now, it was a broken one, I believe, and I picked it up very cheap, didn't know it was broken, thought it was whole when I first started getting into the battle games, strategy battle game. And I decided that what I was going to do was I was going to build that moment when Gandalf is stood on the edge when the Balrog has just fallen and the Balrog's fallen, and then was going to use a bit of wire and sculpt it so that it was his whip just about to curl around Gandalf's ankle. Now this must have been up there a good 4 or 5 years, seriously a long time, and I've not looked at it because I haven't had time or inclination. However, now I do have the time and I do have the inclination, so I am going to complete this build as part of this video. So I'll bring you along with that adventure when I get to it, and I hope that you really enjoy watching. I've been having a look at this a little bit on and off through my working day. I'm trying to work out what I'm going to do and how I'm going to start, and I've realised the first thing I need to do is actually just dust it because it is covered in dust and that is not a good look. So I'm going to dust this, and then I will probably start off by working out how I'm going to sculpt the whip. So I'll dust after I've talked. So let me zoom in a little bit on where we need to be looking. Hopefully that will focus on okay. Might need to get a little bit more light on our subject, but anyway, I think that's going to be fine. So what we're going to have is the arm is going to be glued in its slot, and pretty much how it should be. And then we've got the hand separate, because what I'm going to do is work out how much of this whip I need, and then I will attach the whip to the hand, and then I'll be able to glue the hand in place with the whip so I can work on it a little bit easier. So probably the arm I'll glue in pretty soon, and then I will sculpt with the hand and the whip, and then put that in last. So the arm will be roughly here. Let's see if I can do this while the camera's on. Just get that in kind of a little bit. There we are. And I think what will happen is this will come out and go back. So probably roughly that's what will happen. It'll be a bit more straighter coming out, but it's going to be reaching up, and I want it to be just reaching up to where Gandalf is, because if you remember in the film, it literally is just the tip which hits up to where Gandalf is. So if I zoom out a little bit so you can see that a bit better, the arm will go there, the hand will be like that. I had the arm on backwards, the hand will be like that, and then the whip will go roughly like that, reaching up towards Gandalf, who will be stood right on the very edge of the bridge. So I need to clean this first, and then finalise this, cut my metal, and then start sculpting. And at the moment I'm considering just using green stuff to do some flames coming off of the whip. I'm going to have a quick look at some of the stills in the films. But yeah, let's get some cleaning done, and then when I'm ready I'll probably glue the arm on and do the little bit of snipping and planning, and then I'll bring you along for the next step when I've got something real to show you. I've just had a lot of fun with my Dremel with a very fine drill and a bit of super glue and super glue activator, and what you can see there, which I'm not going to touch because it's still going off, is the fact that the hand now has that little bit of soft metal, which is what I'm going to sculpt into a whip, and it's going to look great. So I'm going to let that go off and then get the green stuff and secure the joint a bit maybe before I leave it, but I'm going to leave it for a few minutes now for the super glue to dry, and then tomorrow I can start actually sculpting it into a flaming whip. So very cool, very cool. The next step to do, I'm not sure when it'll happen, but I do need to put some proper paint onto that Gandalf. He's only under primed at the moment. He needs to become the grey wizard, not the black wizard. And I also will need to start thinking about how I'm going to do the flames and smoke around the Balrog. I was originally going to put LEDs in and stuff, but I'm probably not going to worry about that for now. I'm going to leave this as a static display with no lights. So I might just put some smoke and paint it. So we shall see. But for now, I'm very pleased. This is really nice to get this project back on the go. It's been sat up on that shelf for years, probably 4 years. This is one of the first dioramas I ever started, and I never finished it just because, I don't know, I just didn't. But now I'm finishing it for you guys, so thanks for that inspiration. As you know, I wasn't going to bother doing the base, which is step one. However, I've thought about it a bit more, and I am actually going to do it, so it's going to be a bit more enjoyable to play, and yeah, and also it's going to give me an opportunity to make a little bit more Moria terrain, and I really like those Moria terrain pieces, so I'm just going to do it. So I also worked out what they were meaning. So what they're meaning is you're going to have a cavern, obviously, or a chasm, which the bridge is going to go over, and then at one end you'll have the steps coming down, and then the bridge, and then the bridge will go to a bit of the standard Moria terrain which we made 2 videos ago, and I will try to remember in this clip to put a link to that, but if not, go to the playlist and you'll find it. in the playlist. So that's why it talks about doing a slope and cutting along the shape, because it's basically telling you to mirror exactly the contours of the corner terrain piece that you're going to use. So if I now just quickly pull the magazine up, what you can see here is you have the base, and then at an edge you have one of the corner pieces, which is cool. I'm going to do something slightly different, which is going to result in the same rough thing. You see in front of you one large sheet, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on it roughly where I want it to be cut. Now actually I'm just going to need to grab a ruler, so just give me 1 second. There we are. That's where the slight reorganisation that I made of this room is not quite helping me out. So it's saying that this needs to be 80 centimetres, which is actually most of this board. So the extent of this board is actually going to be pretty much what I need. So what I'll do is I'll measure 80 centimetres along the edge, and that's how long this needs to be. There we are. So those are my 2 marks, and what I can now do is I can now draw a line, which is what I'm going to cut out using my table. So let me draw that line. So that's going to be the correct dimensions to play the game which is in this magazine if I ever come to it, and this will be a good base. What I will then be able to do is use this and other offcuts to create the other end. So I've got, so I'll be able to build up another multi-layer one in the same way as I did for the previous magazine, so I won't be filming all of that for this, you'll just see it done. And all I'm doing for this is going to be cutting this out, beveling it, and then painting it with the grout mix. So I'm not going to put very much more on the camera about this. I just wanted to explain what I'd worked out and show you that I am doing it, because you'll see it in the end pictures. So yeah, I'm going to kind of paint all of this black, and then when we come to the dry brush we'll be doing it all together. So there we are, I am doing the base. As you can see, I'm just mixing up my grout mix, and what I thought I'd do just before I did that was show what I did last night. I didn't film any of it because, well, I was just like playing around. I wasn't planning on doing any hobby, and it was one of those times when you're not planning on hobbying and you do anyway, and then you have a great time. So as you can see, we've got the base cut, but I also did the other end. So let me move the camera a little bit and show you a little bit more detail of what I've done there. There we are. So this is the other side of the bridge, and you can see that we've got the flat plane. This is where the bridge will start, and I've also done the steps, which is where the Fellowship flee up and out after Gandalf has fallen. And I just decided to do that just for fun. It's not part of the design in the magazine, but it certainly gives more of an impression as to what's going on. And I also have left a platform here because the goblins are up high and they are shooting across, and also just makes it for a little bit more interest and a little bit more variety on the levels. So what I'm now going to do is paint all of this with my grout mix, and then I'll be ready for dry brushing. So yeah, I had a lot of fun piecing that together from mods and scraps. If I just rotate it slightly, you can see the steps. There we are. So the steps going up. So yeah, I'm really pleased actually. It's one of those funny things where something you weren't going to do just works out for the best. The last time I recorded anything for this build was the 10th of December, and it is now the 29th, and I've not touched it ever since. And the reason I've not touched it is a couple of reasons. One, Christmas, obviously, it's got in the way. But this, if you're a regular watcher and you watch my vlogs, you'll know that I talked a little bit about hobby burnout. And I must admit that this whip for the Balrog has been a large contributor to feeling a little bit demotivated and struggling. I did some work. I'm not even putting the clip that I recorded on the 10th of December because it's just rubbish. It didn't work at all. And yeah, there was just no point in showing it because it was me cursing and swearing a bit, which isn't really what I do on this channel. And so I put it away and I worked on some other bits, but not very much. And then I've had a break at Christmas, and so I'm coming back now with a few days left in the month where I want to finish it with a new idea. And over Christmas we watched Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, the extended editions back to back, and I took some screenshots of the film, which I'll flash up now, which have helped me to kind of identify what I was doing wrong. I was trying to go for this kind of clever multi-branching flaming effect, which isn't really what you see. So I'm going to spend the next couple of days finishing this off, because the main build, all it needs now is a dry brush. As you've seen, I finished that in a day and a half or 2 days or something. It was very, very quick. But this diorama, which has sat on my shelf for many years, literally 4 or 5 years maybe even, it's been up there. That's probably the reason why it's been up there, is because the whip was always a big thing and something I was a bit scared of doing, and so now I'm going to finish it. I'm determined to. We'll find out together whether I do, but I'm going to give it a really, really good go before the end of the month, when I need to finalise this build to publish it next year. And yeah, so we'll crack on. So I thought I'd just give a little bit of an update now, talk through the struggles I've had this month, which isn't normal on my Battle Games Middle-earth builds. But I suppose that's life. So let's get back to it, let's get creating. Let's see if we can get this whip done, and then the diorama is fundamentally completed. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue the hand onto the wrist. But you can see here that is my terribly failed attempt at doing the whip the first time, which just, yeah, green stuff and that, it just didn't work. So there we are. I think also my green stuff is getting a little bit old, and that could be a reason why it has failed. So I have some super glue gel here, which hopefully works still. So when that goes off, I can now come in with my wire and plot the course up to Gandalf, which is out of shot at the moment, that also needs painting for it as it happens. And then I'm thinking about using air dry clay to do the shape of the whip and get that done. So and then I'll paint it in place, and hopefully it will be finished and ready in time. So I'll let that go off for a little bit, and bring you along for the next step, which will be preparing the wire when that's dried. So this is the wire that I'm going to use. It is, what, 3mm, and I've split it off, as you can see, from some 2-core. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip back the plastic outer wrappings and make it so that it's got probably bare, I think, but I might leave it with the blue because that might be a little bit easier for things to stick to. So first of all, what I'll do is I will carve back the white. Be careful if you're doing this, don't cut yourself. Get a sharp knife, it's the best way, unlike this one, which is not sharp enough really. But once you've cut it, I've got some pliers, so I'll be able to grip and strip it back. So I will get that done, and then what we'll do is we'll work out roughly how long we want it, cut it down to size, and I'm going to do a test piece of using the air dry clay just to make sure that it actually is going to work. So I'll get this stripped back, which is going to be quicker than it looks now when I'm not talking on camera, and then I'll bring you along to show you how the test piece has worked. So I'll do that now off camera, we'll just check that out. So I will get this stripped and see you in a minute. Well, there we are. So I've done a basic bit of sculpting here with the air dry clay. That looks like that's going to work, but I'm going to let it go off for a couple of hours and come back to it when it's maybe a little bit more dried. And then if I'm still happy, then I will continue. And you can see here that I've got the blue stripped back on this to a good extent. So I've got plenty there to work with now to do the actual whip. So I'm going to let that go off, and I'll come back later and check it and make sure it is going to be alright and paintable, and then I will start on the whip. I'm quite pleased, because if this doesn't work, then I'm going to be forced to just give up on this experiment, and this will be a failed part of this video, which is just a shame. It is what it is, it doesn't matter in one sense, but in another sense I want to finish this and get it done so that I can put it up on display, because I really, really like that scene and I really like the concept of what I'm trying to build. The test piece went pretty well. As you can see here, that is the test piece, and it's dried really nicely, and I've been able to get a good enough, smooth enough finish. I can do better than that when I'm actually practicing and doing it and attempting it properly. So what I've got now is I have a length of the same cable, which I have filed down to a point at the top and made sure that that reaches from the whip up to just behind Gandalf, which is where I want it to go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to get the air dry clay and smooth it over, and I will probably leave just a little bit at the bottom and then smooth it so it gets really thin towards the top, and I will use milliput to stick it to the handle, and I will glue it to just touching the edge of the bridge there, so that will support it at both ends, and hopefully that'll be enough. This is not playable, this is a diorama, so long as it doesn't fall off completely immediately, then it'll be fine. So I'm going to sit now, watch some films, watch some YouTube videos, and cover this just with a very thin layer of air dry clay, and maybe do a couple of little bits coming off it to make them look like flames. But I just want to get this done now. I'm a bit fed up with it. So yeah, I'll bring you back when it's ready, which hopefully it will dry by tomorrow, and I can glue it on and get this finished. My air dry clay is dried. And now what I'm going to do is take this downstairs and get some aerosols and spray it first of all white and then yellows and what have you, and then I will finish off with the detail painting when I glue it back on upstairs. So yes, I'm just going to go and do that now. It won't take long to dry. That's the one benefit of aerosols, and then I can get it glued in place and hopefully finish this diorama up. So there you are, that is looking great. I've just used like aerosols, car primers and what have you to paint that. I'm really pleased actually with how it's come out. It's actually much better than I thought it would be. You can see the other idea there. It may well have worked, but I'm going to go with what I've got now, I think. I don't know, the flames look a bit naff to me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to join this onto the model using milliput to create a good join, and then I'll touch up the paint job like I've said, and then I need to paint Gandalf and finish off the base, and then this is done. So yeah, I might even get this into the video, which would be nice. For a long while there I thought I wasn't going to achieve that, but yeah, now we have a whip, which was what was always holding me back, all the way back from years ago. This is what stopped me finishing it then. I'm pretty pleased, and I will now do that gluing, and I'll show you what it looks like when it is finished. So here's hoping this works. This is the first time I've ever used milliput. I've glued this in place using super glue, just as a temporary measure, and I've also glued at the top using super glue. I've just mixed up some of this milliput, and I'm now going to wrap it around and then leave it to go off over the evening and overnight, and then tomorrow I can come in, sand it down a bit and paint it. So the purpose of this is to make it so that it's a very, very solid joint. It's very different to green stuff, this, in that it's a lot more sticky to my fingers. I think I may need to use like Vaseline or something if I'm going to use this more. Bought it a while back and I just never got to it. So there we are. That now could be left to go off, and then I can come in and paint it later, and then we're nearly done, which is really, really cool. We are entering the finishing touches of this now, which is really, really cool. So as you can see, the whip is in place, and also it's dried off, and it's also yellow, which is nice because it means that it will be easier to paint. I just need to come in with some red and some black to blend it in. Probably just some red, to be honest. But it does look particularly good, and I'm very, very pleased. However, what I do need to do now, and I might get a bigger brush, is come in and paint where I can't remember what actual material that is. It might even be plaster or polyfiller or something like that. But I need to come in and paint the base of this board, because yeah, it's not black enough. Ben Bowles from Benji's Hobbies had a very good point, saying that it would be really good if I had some of that absolute black, you know, the black 3.0 or whatever, to make it really, really jet. But I don't. So all I'm going to do for now, until I maybe get some if I decide to, and give that a go, is just come in with this cheap house paint and paint the whole thing black. So I will do that now. I will probably paint the whole of the base again and get a bigger brush, but I need a smaller brush for doing around the Balrog because I don't want to wreck it. So yeah, so I'll get all that painted. Once that's painted, I'll come in with some red paint on the whip, and then officially done. Very, very pleased to have achieved this month. With all the progress being made on the advanced build, all I've got left to do now is paint the little bit of the join between the whip and the hand. It's time for me to come back here and do the magic of the dry brush. So I have my dark grey, which is what I always dry brush with first, and what we'll do is we'll come in and we'll do that over everything. And then when that's done, I'll come in with my lighter grey and go over again, very much more lightly even than this, and then we're done. I just love it. I mean, it's probably my favourite part of the whole process, is when you come in and with such a simple technique, you bring the whole thing to life. So I'm going to do that on this base and all the other pieces that I put together, and then when that's done and the lighter one is done, then we'll put a table together and we'll have a look at it in detail, and I will really look forward to filming that. This has been a good fun week, good fun month, even though I only did like 3 days at the beginning of the month and now 3 days at the end, but that's what Christmas is, eh? And here we are, all dry brushed and set up on the bench for a final little bit of a glamour shot before we wrap this video up. This has been a fun build. The main terrain took me only a few days. It could literally have been done in 2 days, I think, and that's what you see here. So let's just do a little bit of a pan across. You can see there's the stairs. I've got the little bit of scattered terrain now that's in the middle. Then we have the actual bridge, and then over here on this side we have the other side of the bridge, and at the back is the stairs which they flee up after Gandalf falls. As I say, could probably have done this in a couple of days and been very happy, but this is a month build, and so I've done lots of other things, and this just sat and waited for me to complete it for the end of the month. The other part of the build, however, was quite stressful for me because I was so nervous and worried about doing that whip, but I got there. So what I'll do now is move this out of the way, put that diorama in place, do a little bit of a shot on that, and we'll talk about that, and then we will finish the video. And here we are with the diorama, and I'm so pleased that I got this done. I began this years ago and built the bridge very early, and I mean, it's really good. It shows some of the things that I've now perfected, or not perfected, but got much better on, like the dry brushing and the way to do rocks. I did this, I think, just with a mix of plaster and paint and maybe a bit of PVA, but I can't remember if I even put PVA in it. It's only foam sitting on a bit of a board with some foam on top of it, a bit of a wooden board, and this was a broken Balrog that I had, that I decided, rather than, it came without a tail basically, and rather than fanning around, I basically thought, you know what, I'll make a nice diorama, and then I got to the point where you saw at the beginning of the video and stopped. Now obviously the painting on the Balrog is not great, but I'd already glued it in and stuck it in by the time I came back to it, and I wasn't about to take it apart to do that repainting. The thing that really stopped me years ago, and almost this month, was doing the whip. Now I'm very happy with how it looks. It's not perfect, but it certainly does show exactly what I was trying to achieve. I could do a better job, and other people probably could do even better. But if you look at it now, let me just quickly adjust this focus point very slightly. There we are. So you can see Gandalf right at the top, just turning away, and the whip is just reaching up about to grab his ankle, and that was exactly what I was looking at achieving, and exactly the look that I was looking for, of the whip just reaching up as the Balrog collapses back into the abyss. So I've done it. Brilliant. I will now go to the outro, and then we'll get some photographs and some detail shots for you to enjoy. So there you are, a fitting way to leave Moria, with Gandalf just about to fall and turn into Gandalf the White. I hope you've enjoyed this video. It has been more of a stress than I thought it would be, particularly with that whip, but I've got there, I've achieved it, and hopefully it has inspired you to keep going with some projects that maybe you've kind of given up on, because frankly that's what that diorama was. It had just sat on top of that shelf, which is up behind me now, with a big empty space on it now, but I'm happy about that big empty space because the diorama is finished and I can put that on display. Next month we leave Moria and we go to the White City, and I'm very looking forward to what the magazines will take me through with them, and taking you through those builds, and hopefully you will join me again next Tuesday, the first Tuesday of the month, which will be February. This is going out on January, so February, the first Tuesday of the month, we will be in the White City, Minas Tirith, and start building through a series of terrain tutorials for that location. So thanks so much for watching. Pop a comment below if you've enjoyed it. If you've built along, if you've done something similar to my Gandalf about to fall diorama, I'd love to hear it. I always do reply to all the comments, and yeah, I would love to hear from you in that way. And I will wrap up by saying, as I always do, please stay healthy, stay safe, and stay well.